Yeah, thanks for having me, team. I really wish circumstances were different and I could be in the Netherlands right now. I really miss that place. Last time I was there, it was so amazing. The team was amazing. The atmosphere, everything was great. So I really wish I could have been there, but this is the best we can do in today's world. So here I am. I just want to thank Randy for reaching out and giving me this opportunity. I appreciate you, Randy. Hope to see you soon. And yeah, so a little bit more about me. Yeah, I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Tipe, where we're basically a headless CMS. If you want to learn more, you can go check out our website, type.io. We're in private, private release right now, but we're actually doing a public release at the beginning of next year. So you can check it out. It actually works very well with Next.js. We work very closely with the Next.js team in Vercel to get this thing going. So yeah, it should be pretty cool. Other than that, before that, I was basically been an engineer here in Silicon Valley for quite some time now. Worked at a lot of companies like Google, Udacity, consulted with companies like Visa, American Airlines, Facebook, Twitter, Apple, you name it. I tried to do work with them at some point. And here I am now. So what I want to talk about today is actually going to be one of my favorite technologies, and that's going to be Next.js. So I think Next.js is one of those technologies that when you hear about it, you're just like, well, why do I need it? I already use React. There's already Create React app. What is Next.js going to give me that I don't already have? And there's also this thing called Gatsby that I heard people use. So it's like, why would I use this? But then after you use it, you start to realize you can't go back. And I don't know if anyone here has used Next.js, but this talk that I'm going to give today is going to be on how to get the best from Next.js in a production environment. So I won't be going over the intros and the basics. I might do a little quick refresher, but if you want to learn Next.js from the ground up, there's many resources out there. The docs are really good. I actually taught a course on Frontend Masters for intro to Next.js that you can follow along if you like video courses instead. But yeah, this course is just going to follow. You already got a site up. How do you deal with production, issues with something like Next.js? So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to share my screen here. And I don't have any fancy slides or anything like that because I'm not a person that likes to write slides. And also I think I have an hour for this one. So I feel like I had a little longer. So I feel like just doing live code would probably make more sense to really just be able to describe the issues that you're going to encounter when in production with Next.js, because I think they are pretty unique. But I also think Next.js and the team there did a really good job of coming up with some really good solutions out of the box for you to solve them. You almost don't have to do anything custom to solve some of these issues. So to get started, let's just go ahead and bootstrap a Hello World Next.js app. So I'll just say npx create next app like that, and I'll call it a demo app. So we'll just do that and just let this thing build out. I've been using Next.js for, not even just with Type and doing the integration and stuff there, but we actually use Next.js for a lot of our, websites and apps and stuff like that. And so far, I just haven't been able to find a good reason to not use it when using React. There's like some small reasons why I wouldn't use Next.js. I feel like it might be a kitchen sink, but if I would say for 90% of the reasons, I pretty much go with Next.js. Okay, so we'll go into this thing. We'll check it out. Let me know if my font size is too small. I can try to increase it here, but I think it should be good. I think I set it up recently for a talk I gave. Okay, so just to do a quick refresher on Next.js, or for people who haven't used Next.js before, what is Next.js? It's basically what I would call like a complete framework, right? If you think of React as a UI library, in fact, because React doesn't really do anything but allow you to render elements on a page and manage the state for those elements. You still got to bring your own router and your own whatever. Next.js kind of takes that and goes forward with it with tons of opinions that they bake in. So some of these opinions are basically, for instance, they have these file system based opinions like this pages folder here. So whenever I add a React component to this pages folder, like for instance, this index one, what Next.js is going to do is it's going to create a route for me on that, right? So if I go and I start this up with yarn dev or npm run dev, if you're choosing npm here, and I'm gonna open this up, we're gonna go here. you're going to see that the index page that the Hello World app shipped with is going to be right here located at the route of index. And that's because of these opinions here. We have an index.js, which is in the pages. So therefore, when I go to the index page of my app, this component is going to be loaded. So we can take a look at it here. And you can see it's pretty much, oh, let me click on that. It's pretty much the same, it's the same page here, right? So that's how these conventions work. They also have other conventions for like APIs. So Next.js is also what I would call a full stack framework. So it's not just about rendering React components in a single page app or statically. It's also meant for server-side rendering and to be able to handle things like API routes and things like that using serverless functions. And you can create functions pretty easily. You have an API folder inside your pages directory, and then you just make a file. In this case, there's a hello.js, and I'm just exporting a function here that has a request and response, very similar to like a connect-based, express-based node server there. And you can see it's just responding right here, right? So if I were to go to /API/hello and do a request there, we can see what would happen. So if I say /API/hello, you can see I get back John Doe because that's what this is responding with, right? So very simple, very easy to get started. That's basically Next.js. I mean, it does a lot of other things, but again, we're not going to go into too much detail about that stuff. So if you really want to know the nuts and bolts of getting started with Next.js, highly recommend checking out another resource. So what we're going to do here is I kind of just want to talk about some of the problems you're probably going to run into when using Next.js in production, or really honestly, any full stack server-side rendering, static page creating framework out there, and then how you might deal with it if you didn't have internal tools with Next.js, and then how you can deal with it using Next.js. So let's just do that. So one of the first problems that you're going to run into when you're developing something, and I see this a lot, especially with if you're converting over a site that already has a lot of content. And for instance, let's say you have a website that has, I don't know, well over 1,000 blog posts, and those blog posts are in a remote CMS somewhere. Hopefully you're using a headless CMS. Highly recommend using a CMS for every project you have going forward. But let's just say, for whatever reasons, it's taken forever to build, right? So like if we think about, the build time complexity of building something statically ahead of time, that is going to be determined on how long it takes for you to fetch your data, right? And so if you're fetching thousands of documents from some remote source, then now you're at the whim of how long it's going to take that source to give you your stuff. What's the speed of the network? How's their server? Is it cached? I mean, can you even hit it that many times without being blocked? Who knows, right? So you're kind of at the whim there. And I've definitely worked with companies where they'll build a static site and they'll just walk away. They'll go to lunch for the day. They'll pretty much take the rest of the day off because it's going to take a long time to build this thing out. So Next.js has some stuff that we can use that basically makes that moot. Like it just goes away. You don't have to worry about that. So we're going to talk about some of that. So to set up a really good example, let's just do that. So I'll make a blog basically. So I'm gonna make a blog folder here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a route here for a blog with like a slug like that. So this is basically saying I'm making a new route here and it's going to have a parameter in it called slug, right? So that's what that is doing. You're going to import some React here, which I don't think you have to do with Next.js because it handles it, but I don't want my editor ESLint freaking out. So we'll just call this a post like that. It's not really going to do anything. And then we'll just export default that post. Okay. So the first thing you have to do when setting up a dynamic page like this is that Next.js requires us to create something called get static paths like this. So get static paths is a server-side function that we get to use in Next.js. And this is where it kind of gets crazy if you've never seen Next.js. You can use these server-side functions here inside of a component file. And when I say server-side functions, I mean literally server-side functions. You could run database queries in here. You can do whatever you want to do that's applicable in Node. You can read the file system if you want to. So you might be asking yourself, if you've never used Next.js, well, how does that work? You can't use the file system in the browser. You can't use I don't know, Mongo or Postgres in the browser. How does that work? Well, Next.js eliminates this code before it bundles it for the browser. This code only gets executed at build time, or if it's a server-side rendering function, then it gets executed at runtime on the server. So, but it all lives in this file, so that's why it's pretty magical. So get static paths is one function we're going to have to create. Another one we're going to have to create is get static props. They changed it so much I can't remember. So get static props. So basically, again, if we talk about that scenario where we have thousands of blog posts, just off the top of your head, what's one way we could speed up bundling or building our website so we can take it from going, a couple hours to, I don't know, a couple minutes? Well, I mentioned that your site is taking forever to build because of how many, posts you have. So the obvious answer is limit the amount of posts that we're building ahead of time. And then therefore the speed of which we build will be faster. Yeah, obviously that makes sense, but hello, we need those posts to be there. They need to be rendered. They need to be there so our users can see them. Well, what if I told you we can do both? We can eliminate how many posts we build at build time, but we can still have the posts be there, even though we didn't build them, and they would still be static. We wouldn't get any performance hits. They wouldn't be single page apps. It would be static as if they were built already, right? So that sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, that's what we're going to get with Next.js. So in order to do that, the first thing we have to do is return some paths. So I'm pretty sure the way that works, let's see if I can remember this. It's paths like this, and it's going to take an array of objects like that. And then I want to say it takes a params, maybe we'll figure it out. And then the name of the params is going to be whatever you called in here. So in this case, slug. So it'll be like slug, and then you put a slug. So let's say we have a slug of a blog post called learn to code, like that. And then we'll add another one like this. And we'll say, I don't know, top 10 libs, something like that. So we'll return that. And then basically down here, what we'll do is we'll get this context object. And this context object is going to have, for whatever route that the user is on, right, it's going to pass in the parameter for that route. So if I navigate to /blog/learn to code, that's what the parameter is going to be passed in here. And then using that parameter, I'm able to go fetch from wherever, in this case, a headless CMS or some data source, the actual document, the actual content for, the thing that matches this slug. So that's basically what would happen here. So if I were to say, give me the params, or actually we can just do this. We can just fake a CMS right quick. That might be the best thing. So we'll just make a new file here and we'll call it CMS.js, and we'll export some default content here like this. Or yeah, so we'll say post, and I'm going to say drafts. We'll get to why I'm doing this in a minute. Drafts, and then publish. So we got some draft posts here, and then I'll have something to call like slug. And then basically, what did I have here? Learn to code and top 10 libs. Let's do that. So that one, and this one. And then, you might have some body in here. So content, probably use Markdown or something like that, but, we'll do that. That's our blog post. Okay, so now we have our CMS. So what we can do is we can import that CMS. Obviously, I hope you're not doing this in production. Please use a real CMS. We got that. And then now what we can do is we can say, I want to find the post that is, cms.post.drafts.find. Get the post, and then context.params.slug equals post.slug. Right, so we'll get that post there, and then we'll return some props with the post. Right, so some of this might be wrong. We'll see in a minute, but that's basically how you would set up a dynamic page on Next.js. So if you use Next.js, none of this is probably new to you. You've probably done this before. So now we'll just actually return something here. And we'll just call it a post. that, or yeah. And then what we'll do is I'll just put the content in here. Or actually, you know what? To make it even better, I'll give it a title. Let's do that. There we go. There we go. So then now I'll come down here and I'll just put the title. So basically when we return props here, whatever this is, we get access to it in our props. That's what props is for. So oops, it's a post. And then what I can do is I can just say post.title like that. And you know, that should be good for now. So we'll do that. And now what we'll do is we'll navigate to our blog post and kind of see what we broke here. So what did I say? Blog. And then I had one that was like learn to code. We'll check that out. So unexpected param. Oh, I forgot a comma there. There we go. Cool. Okay, so this is exactly what I want to see. So so you can see we have this error here. So now we're getting to the production stuff. So this error basically says the fallback key must be returned from get static paths. This is the magic that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so right now, what I'm trying to do, I basically am saying, so typically what you would do in a get static paths is this is where you would go fetch, again, from a CMS or wherever your data is, and you would say, I need to go get all the slugs for all the thousands of blog posts that I need. So you would make an API call here, right? You would make an API call to get all the slugs for all the posts, right? So this is going to be a big hit. So this will slow your build down. But what I want to do, instead of making a call to get all the posts, I'm just going to make a call to get, I don't know, 2 posts. Even though I have 20,000 blog posts, I'm only going to get 2, and that's the only ones I'm going to return. So then what I can do is I can tell Next.js by saying something like fallback, and I could put true here, right? So by telling Next.js, hey, fallback true, if we go back and save this, one, it should get rid of that error. This thing's freaking out because this probably didn't, yeah, I don't think that's, let's look at this right quick. Obviously my find is messed up. Let's see. Context object. Oh, okay, well, let's just not do you right quick until I see what that is. There we go. Oh, params.slug. What did I put? ctx.params.slug equals post.slug. Huh. Oh, I know why. I know why. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll just keep this right quick. Okay, so anyway, the fallback true, basically what this is going to do is it's going to, let me go back here for a minute. The fallback true, what it's going to do is basically going to say, hey, if someone tries to make a GET request to blog / some slug that I didn't generate a path for. So let's say they try to go to / hello world, blog / hello world. I don't want this to 404. Instead, what I want to happen is I want to, at runtime, run get static props with that parameter that I didn't generate a path for, and then generate it right here at runtime. And then when it is generated, I want to go ahead and save it and cache it. So when the next person comes to that route, it's already there as if it was built ahead of time already, like these two were, right? So it's a, just in time static site generation for pages that you haven't built ahead of time. And that's what fallback true is going to do. And it's also asynchronous. So basically, when I do put fallback true, I'm just going to put false right quick. When I do put fallback true here, it's basically, it's going to happen in the background. So I would have to show the user some type of loading indicator here that says, hey, we're loading right quick. This is asynchronous, but you also have the option to make it blocking, which basically prevents you having to show a loading indicator, and it won't even navigate to that page until it gets rendered statically, and then it shows it. But we're going to start with false here, like that. And we're going to save that and see why There we go. Okay, so this page cannot be found. Serializing error, params, post return this around. Okay, I must be doing something wrong here. Let's just check this out. Nope, always goes wrong when you're live coding. Okay, so reason undefined. Huh. Why is that undefined? I don't know why. CMS post strats.
But sorry to interrupt, but people
Yes.
are mentioning missing R in the URL. So it's lean to code and it should be learn to code in your browser in the URL.
Okay, I'm like, what is I don't know why that's not working. Okay, thank you. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Not breaking down. Let me add this back. Cool. Okay, cool. So we got learn to code there. So now let's test the fallback, right? So I'm going to put fallback true. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my CMS. I'm going to add a new slug here. And I'm going to call it, hello world. Or let's just call it hello. Okay. So if I go back here, I'm not generating a path for that third blog post. It's not being generated. And Next.js will only statically generate pages at build time if the paths were here too. So because I don't have that path, it is not going to be statically generated, but I'm still going to be able to access it. So the way, it's going to hit an error first, and I'll show you how to get past that error, but it's going to generate it after I hit it, right? So let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to, first we have to, all we have to do is go here, and then we need to go to hello. So you can see this is the error that I was talking about. It's going to hit this error first. And this is because I have fallback true, which is asynchronous. And right now it's going to attempt to load this page, but without a post because it's trying to fetch it in the background. So the way you would have to get past this is you would have to import the router from Next router, or in fact, I think you want to do use router. And the thing that you want is, I think it's just like this, router equals use router. And then you want to say something like if router dot is fallback. So to tell you if this is in fallback mode or not, I just want to return, something that's loading. All right, so I'll say, not that, I don't know what that is. There we go, so I'll just say like dot, loading, something like that, right? So I'll just return loading. So now we can go back here, and you can saw that for a moment there, it showed loading. You see that? Loading, and then hello. Okay, that's what fallback is doing. While it's loading, it actually came down here, even though we didn't generate the path, and then it generated it for us. In production, when I do this loading once, and then I do it again, it won't show loading the second time because it's already cached on wherever it is. But in development, it's just going to do it every single time. So this is how you can get around that long build time. So literally pick a number, like whatever is good and performing for you and your team, and then do fallback true, or even what I would probably say is might be better, which is fallback blocking. And basically what blocking does is you don't really need this anymore because now I won't even render this page until it's generated, right? So I can probably just get rid of that. And now if I go to blocking, you can see it just won't even, well, let me show you a different page so you can actually see. It won't even navigate to the page until it's rendered, right? So if I go to learn the code, and then I go to hello, you see, even though it's quick as I'm on development, it won't navigate to the page until it's rendered. So, you have to handle that UI however you want to do that. But I would prefer blocking depending on the page. So this is like one common problem I would see with going to production. I don't know how you would get past this using something like, Gatsby or something like that. I know there's incremented building and stuff like that. But one, I think you have to pay for some of those features. You have to use like their cloud. And two, there's still a lot of code and stuff that you have to write to get this to work. But this works for free automatically by literally just passing one thing. That's it. Very simple. Cool. So another problem that you're going to run into in production is what if, sure, we have fallback, we have, being able to at runtime dynamically, statically render blog posts, that were already created, but we didn't render. But what about the blog posts that aren't created yet, right? How do we tell Next.js that we just created some new blog posts and we want those pages to be there, for indexing on the search or whatever? How do we, notify our build, our website that something new is there? So typically the way you would do this, especially with the headless CMS, is you would use webhooks, right? So on your headless CMS or whatever platform you're on, you would say, I want to add a webhook here that when someone publishes a document, or when someone makes a change to a document, or someone deletes a document or whatever, I want to do a webhook to Netlify. I want to do a webhook to, wherever you got your thing deployed, and that's going to trigger a rebuild, right? You would literally have to rebuild the entire site whenever something changes. And yes, I know these platforms have been optimized, especially Gatsby's Cloud, to only rebuild the one thing that changed, but it's still a rebuild. You still have to rebuild it, and you really, going to be stuck depending on what platform you're on, which platform you want to choose, and you might be charged for it and different things like that. Because Next.js is a full stack framework, we don't actually need webhooks, which is amazing. I'm going to show you how. And then two, you don't have to do a full rebuild at all. And you kind of get some stuff for free. So one of the things that Next.js and the Vercel team created was something called revalidate. So revalidating is basically, you could think of it as like a cron job in the background on whatever interval that you want. And you can tell any page that, hey, on this interval, I want you to go back and I want you to, rerun get static props. I want you to do that again, because this page's content is changed on the regular by our growth team that's always doing experiments, and we always want to show the latest. And webhooks just aren't fast enough. Literally, by the time a webhook triggers a rebuild, we've already done 2 more experiments, so it's already so far behind. So we need things to be instant. So what we can do is we can set up an interval that basically goes and fetches any new content, any new data there, and potentially re-render it and recache it for us. So let's check that out. So I'm gonna go to this index page here. I'm going to do a get static props here. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but you can do async stuff in here, right? I don't know. I think that was going without saying. So yeah, so get static props. And basically what we want to do here is, let's just return some props. We'll just return some data. It's not really doing anything right now. Let's just say a message that says, hello, like that, right? And then basically what we can do is we can come down here and we can say revalidate. And then basically what you can do is you can give it any time in seconds of, on whatever interval in seconds do you want get static props to rerun, and it will do that. So in this case, I don't know, let's say I wanted this to run every 5 seconds, something like that. You can imagine, I mean, right now I'm just hard coding this, right? But imagine this was like await from, cms.get homepage, right? Because the homepage changes so frequently that every 5 seconds I want to go get the new homepage content. Every 5 seconds I want to go do that. That's what this is for, right? So we're just statically putting it in here, so it's not that big of a deal, but you get this for free, right? And you can't really get this anywhere with a static only framework because it's static by nature. It's not full stack. It doesn't have a server. There's no way that you can do this on, something like Gatsby, or what's the other React one? I think it's like React Static or something like that. I know if you've used the recent React Remix, which is a really great framework, but I know it's paid and it's in like a private thing. They do something very similar because they're a full stack framework too. So you can see kind of the world in the React ecosystem, moving towards this full stack server, type of framework where still everything is still static. Even though we're full stack, even though we're server rendered, everything is what I would call eventually static. It doesn't really matter how you build it, it's eventually static. And that's the world that we're moving towards too. Whereas before it was kind of just like, oh, Jamstack is cool, static only, But now it's more like, well, what if we could build it and use it in any way we want and everything was still static? We still got those benefits. And that's kind of what Next.js is doing. They're pioneering that, in my opinion. So yeah, you kind of get this for free. I don't think I could demonstrate this here locally. But wait, actually, I guess I could just do a console.log in here. We can see if it runs on interval. Let's see. Dates. Let's see what happens if we go here. So if we go to the home page, and if we look here, let's see if it actually calls revalidate every 5 seconds on my local machine. I don't think it does. I think that's going to be dependent on the platform, because it's using the Lambda functions for that. So yeah, I don't think you're going to see it here locally, but trust me when I say it's going to run that on every interval that you put there. And it's very helpful, and it eliminates the need for webhooks. Literally, you do not need webhooks anymore to update your pages. It's kind of refreshing. Because I know a lot of products actually charge for that. Like I know a lot of, especially CMSs, will charge for how many webhooks you want to set up, and then managing those webhooks, and authorizing those webhooks, making sure they came from the right source. It can be very tedious. Well, now you don't have to. You can just say revalidate and put a time on there, and you're good to go. So very awesome. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, I just want to make sure I have enough time. Do I still have enough time here? Yeah. Okay. Just let me know if I'm running out of time. I'm not looking at the clock because I can talk all day. All right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is one. It's not so much of a, I don't know, problem you would have, but more of a solution to a situation that you didn't know you needed, really. And it's what I like to call, well, it's not what I like to call, it's what it's called. It's called previews, right? So let's talk about the difference between app previews and what I would call like content previews. So Next.js, and specifically Vercel, has something called app previews. And if you go look at their website, I mean, their slogan is, unless it changed, it basically says like edit, preview, ship. Like that's the flow that they want people to get into. That preview part is specifically being able to preview your app. So if you hook up your app to Vercel, if you deploy it there and you connect it to GitHub, whenever you make a PR, Vercel is going to deploy a preview branch of that app, and it's going to take screenshots of pages that might have changed, and it's going to post those inside of your GitHub issues, so you can actually see and you can click on a preview. It's really great. It's really great to be able to check things out before they go live, and that's awesome. Obviously, you can set that stuff up yourself, but you get it for free with Vercel and Next.js. Or actually, I'm sorry, you get that for free with just Vercel in general. It doesn't really matter what framework you have. So they have that. But then in Next.js, there's something called like content previews. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So what is a content preview? Basically, this is assuming that you have not hard coded all your content or data inside of a component, and it's actually coming from some source. Like in our case, we had our fake CMS here. You have some content coming from some source that's not hard coded in your component. So assuming you're doing that, which by the way, you should, you probably don't want to have to, publish something before it's ready just to see what it's going to look like on your website, right? Everyone wants to give WordPress, slack, but WordPress was magical. There was something magical about going to /WP admin, filling out a blog post, filling out some content, and just watching it appear on the website. It was so magical. Now that headless CMSs have come out, they're kind of decoupled by nature. That's the whole point of a headless CMS, is that it's decoupled. But when you do decouple it, developers rave about it, and it's amazing. But the non-technical people on your team are sad. They're complaining that they're missing out on that magic that WordPress and Squarespace and Wix had. So, having previews kind of adds that back to it. So a lot of CMS products and frameworks out there have their own support for previews and stuff, but Next.js really wanted to make this simple. Next.js wanted, the team over there thought that, hey, if we make features that make it easy to integrate with, sibling services like CMSs, then, people will more likely use our framework because we integrate so much better with their tools like CMSs. So the preview feature is what I would call like a third degree feature. It's not meant to be used by you as a developer, although you can, and we're going to walk through it. It's really meant to be used by a CMS, and then you use it through the CMS. And I'll show you why that makes sense. So let's do it. So if I am, and we can stick with the home page here, this will be a good example. So for instance, let's say we have a title here, and what I'll do is I'll just take the title that's already there. We'll just get rid of this anchor tag. Welcome to Next.js, right? So we'll do this, and I will put that here. Okay, welcome to Next.js. And then what we'll do is we'll say, what did I call it? Data, I think. So we got that. Data.title, right? So nothing fancy, just replaced it with some dynamic content here, right? So we got data.title. Boom, there we go. Okay, so if now that we have this title hooked up to our CMS, it's not hard coded, we now allow someone on our team, not technical, to be able to edit this. How would we set this up to where I want them to be able to see what their edits are going to look like before hitting publish, which will make the whole world see it, right? So I know we have preview apps, but that doesn't really solve the problem on like previewing the content. So how do I do that? Well, you could set it up on preview apps, right? You could, use the environment variables that Next.js provides you, Vercel provides you when they're in the preview environment. You can check that environment variable. If that environment variable is true, you could make a call to get draft documents instead of published documents, and there you go. And that will actually work. The only problem is the preview app would have to have been triggered in the first place, and it would have to have been pushed to GitHub. A PR would have to have been open. A CLI command would have to have been ran. A non-technical person can't do either of those, and hopefully you're not making them do that. So it's not really good solution for them unless you want to build around that. So instead, we're going to use the preview content feature in Next.js. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to make a new API function here. We're going to call it preview.js. And it's just going to export default or request and a response like that. And basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to use this magical thing that Next.js provides to us on the response object. And basically it's very trivial how it works. It basically just sets a cookie in your browser to let you know that if you're in a preview mode or not. That's it. That's really how previews work. So I could say res.set preview data like this. And I'm just going to pass in an object like that. So this will set a cookie in the browser for us. But a couple things we want to do first. If we kind of look at the preview flow is like, I want to be able to look at a preview of a certain route. So when someone hits this API route to ask for a preview, we need to know what page they want to preview. So the way we can do that is, you can set that up however you want. Again, this is meant for a CMS to consume for you. And then on the CMS, you just click a button. We don't have that right now, so we're going to make it ourselves. So the way I'm going to design it is that the person must pass up the route that they want on the query string. So I'll say the page they want to see is going to be on, res or request.params.page. So that'll be the page. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set that preview data, and then I'm going to say res.redirect to the page like that. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to grab whatever route that they've sent on the query string. I'm going to set the preview cookie, and then I'm going to redirect to that page that they want. And because the preview cookie is set, now what I can do is, in this case, we're only going to do the index page, is I can come here, I can grab this context object. And this context object is going to have something on it that says preview true or false. Preview will be true if the cookie is set. Preview will be false if the cookie isn't set. It's very straightforward. So the preview is true, then I'm going to show some draft content, right? So if in this case, if preview is true, then I'm going to say this is a preview. And if it's not true, then I'm going to show the real content, right? So we can do that. So let's try this out. So I'm going to go to the browser here. I'm going to go to /API/preview like that. But then I need to add a query string on what route that I want. And I called it page. And I want to look at the index page. So I'm going to say page equals /. So let's see what happens. Looks like I broke something. Can't read property page. Oh, maybe it's called query. on here. Maybe it's called query or param, one of those, we'll see. Here we go. So yeah, it was called query. So you can see right now, this is the preview, right? And that's, if we follow the flow again, we went here, I got the page, I set the preview data, I redirected to the page that you gave me. That was the index page. So the index page loaded up, it ran and executed get static props. Preview was true this time. So now I was able to show this preview content instead of the non-preview content, right? So that's pretty cool. But now we have an issue. Now, okay, cool. I saw the preview. This looks great. I want to go back to the non-preview. I'm reloading and it's still showing me the preview. This will cause panic for people on your team who are like just testing out content. They want to preview it and it's probably something inappropriate or whatever, something users aren't supposed to see yet. And they think that it's there now because they're refreshing the page. They're on yourwebsite.com and the preview is still there. It will cause panic. I've seen it. So the way you want to do this is you just want to undo the preview. And I just told you previews were just set as a cookie. So the way we could do that is actually we can just make another route here and we'll call it like clear like this. And I'm gonna grab this preview code here. I'm gonna go back and instead of doing all of this, I believe it's going to remove preview data or clear. I might have to look that up. I can't remember the exact thing. So we'll just do that and then we'll just say res dot, send clear. That's it. We're not going to redirect anywhere. So we'll do that. And let's see if that actually works. So I'll go to /API/clear internal server error. I guess that wasn't it. Remove preview data is not a function. I think it's clear preview data. If that's not it, I'll look it up and stop guessing, I promise. Okay, cool. So that worked. So we cleared the preview data. So now I'll go back here and boom, now we're back on production, right? So that's exactly how you do it. So just to really get into it and show you what that really looks like. So if I go, preview, don't forget to add the page of that. So if I go to the preview, we open up the browser, we go to our application, we go look at the cookies. Please don't steal my cookies. You can see right here, next preview data is here, right? That's set. And just to really show you, if I were just to clear this, right, and then refresh it, it's not going to show the preview anymore, right? We'll go back to production. Pretty cool. So this is a very trivial example. And obviously, me having to manually type in URLs with preview and non-preview was very tedious. This is why I said this feature is meant for CMSs to build for you because the CMS will be the GUI for that. Right now, we don't have a GUI. Yeah, you could totally build one. There's nothing stopping you from coming in here, detecting that one of your teammates is actually logged in on the site or whatever authentication system that you might have for your app. And then you could say, oh, if preview is true and the admin cookie is also set, then I'm just going to add a button in here, right? That says, click this to look at the preview of the content. You could totally do that. But I believe if your team is already using a CMS to edit the content, it would probably be a lot more intuitive for them to, if they're already on that CMS, is to click the preview button on that CMS so they can look things up. So for instance, at Tipe, we set all this up for you because we have a really tight integration with Next.js. So when you use our CLI to connect Tipe to Next.js, we basically generate all this stuff for you. You don't have to do anything. You already have a preview button for every single page, every single document, and it just works. And you don't have to think about it. It won't cause panic. And other CMS products do something very similar too. So pretty intuitive there. Let's see. So we talked about revalidating. We talked about the fallbacks. We talked about the previews. Let's see. The last thing I wanted to talk about then we talked about app previews as well. So yeah, I think that kind of covers some of the main issues, or I would say the generic issues that you're going to see when like deploying to Next.js and how Next.js actually solves them with like their internal, tools and stuff like that. But then you run into like the specific problems that I see people running into that, are obviously very specific to them and their company, and then how they might get past them. And it's not so much of like a performance problem. It's more like a, organization, a efficiency problem. So one of them that I see a lot, and I just want to talk about this feature, is I don't really see a lot of people taking advantage of this feature, and I kind of just want to advocate for it, is what they call like the catch-all routes inside of Next.js. So for instance, right here, I have this slug, right? And this is cool. It's dynamic. It allows me to make one single, component that will match for any route that has this slug in it, and that's awesome. But let's say we're building a documentation website, right? If we go look at any documentation website, let's look at Next.js, for example, and you look at the URL structure, I mean, it's mostly, it doesn't really matter what URL I go to, right? I mean, let's just look at it. It doesn't really matter what URL I go to. It's basically the same component. There's this nav on the left that shows an active state, and there's some content on the right. Sure, the URL is different, but it's the same thing. So in our example, though, we couldn't match right here, right? We might have to do slash dynamic thing slash another dynamic thing, and that would work for up to 2 of these. But let's say it went on forever. We don't know how long it's going to go, which is a very common thing in documentation. You would want to do something like a catch-all. So in this case, let me show you how that works. So if I were to make a new folder, and I would call it docs like this, and then I would say, docs has a topic. So instead of putting topic in like this and saying, cool, we have a dynamic thing called a topic, what I can do instead is I can put a ... here. And basically what this is going to do, this is going to say anything / docs in any path after that, no matter how many paths you have after that, is going to match this route right here, right? So this allows me to reuse the same component for anything after / docs, not including the index page to / docs. It's not inclusive to that. And it's really intuitive. And it saves you a lot of time from having to like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, this page is basically the same page as the other page, but they're different pages, so I gotta make different components. So I'm clever, so I'll abstract a lot of this out and put it in a layout or another component, and I'll just import them. Yeah, that's clever, that's nice, but you just get around that completely just by having this. And how would you know what parameter you're on? Well, basically the difference is, see right here where I have context.params and it's a slug. Well, if I was using the catch-all, this would be an array of all the parameters in the order that they are in the URL. So it wouldn't be, .slug would literally just be an array of, for instance, let's say the topic was introduction / start here / getting started. This would be an array of introduction. And then the second thing would be getting started. And then the third thing will be whatever I just said, I forgot, but it would be that thing, right? So it's really intuitive to be able to do that. And then obviously you just pass that down and you have the same thing. And then you can take this a step further by including the index page by doing another array around it like that. And now it's what they call optional catch-all, but I just refer to it as like inclusive. It just includes the index page for docs too. So not only will this match / docs / anything, this will also just match / docs as well. So it's very intuitive, and I don't see a lot of people taking advantage of this as much as they should, because it's extremely powerful and it cuts down on a lot of the code and complexity and logic that you have to manage as a team. Those were most of the things that I wanted to cover. I know we got some questions in the QA, so I can't wait to read those and answer those. But I would say taking advantage of these techniques. Oh, so let me rewind. Actually, first, in order to be able to take advantage of these techniques, you can't just deploy anywhere. You have to deploy in an environment that is capable of hosting, full stack apps, right? Because Next.js is a full stack app. So at today's time, obviously Vercel supports this. They made it. I know Netlify just recently released support for Next.js and some of its features, if not all of its features. I haven't really dove into it 100%, but I know the team over there, Sarah Drasner and the team over there, are really doing good things with Next.js and Netlify. So check that out. And then if you want to, obviously something like Heroku or AWS comes to mind. I believe if you go on one of those platforms, you're not going to get a lot of this stuff for free, like the revalidation and things like that. You're going to have to create a custom server, which Next.js does allow you to do. You have to create a custom server where you have to kind of do that stuff yourself. So I personally recommend only deploying a Next.js app to either Vercel or in today's world, you know, Netlify, depending on what their support is. I don't recommend doing something custom unless you have a really good reason why you have to do it, as in you have some complicated architecture, it needs to work with something else existing. I don't know, but I don't recommend doing that. I highly recommend just looking out Vercel. Yeah. Oh, and
Well,
I guess one thing I did wanted to touch at before I go was, and I talked about it a little bit when I first started, which was I think a lot of people don't take advantage of the get static props and the get server side props as much as they can. This is extremely powerful. So, you know, we talked about creating APIs here. So you might think like, oh, okay, cool. I'll create routes for my app to consume data, right? You'll do that. It makes sense. I could consume this hello.js route inside of the get static props inside of, you know, this index page. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's highly recommended not to. Let me tell you why. The reason why you wouldn't want to do that is because let's think about it. We're on the same app. It's on the same, it's hosted in the same container. When you make an API call to your own API from this function, you're basically going out of the same network and coming right back in just to get a response. It's unnecessary HTTP that you don't really have to do, when instead you could just take whatever logic is here. Like say there was some database code here, you could just import this code into this file up top. And I know that seems weird because this is a component. It's going to be rendered in the browser, but you can import database. You can import anything Node. You can import the file system. You can import whatever you want. This is Node here. I know it looks like the browser. This is Node. You can import whatever you want, and then you can just use it directly in here. So if you need to do some type of get, you know, on the API routes that you created, do not make a call to them. Instead, use the logic, abstract the logic of those functions and use them inside of get static props directly. That code's going to be cleaned up. It's not going to be in the browser. That's going to be way more performance, going to be much better. As far as mutations go, you can't get around that because you're not going to do any mutations server side, right? You're going to do mutations client side using something like React Query. So yeah, you still would use your API routes for mutations. There's really no way around that. But as far as like getting data, do them and get static props, do them and get server side props, but do not make an HTTP request if it's from your own API. Obviously, if it's from another API, yeah, you have no other choice. You have to make the API call. But if it's from the API that you created here, don't make an HTTP request. Just use the function instead. It's going to be much faster, and it's going to be a lot more easier to maintain. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. Hope I didn't go over too much time here. Yeah, looking forward to the questions.